Thanks, Rabbi Mark. So lovely to be with you. Thanks for inviting me back. And lovely to be with a lot of friends, old and new. For those of you I don't yet know, I'm excited to sit with you. As I always say, this is like a little reunion of so many friends from the world of Jewish meditation. So lovely to be together. So I'd like to share a brief teaching with you all from this week's Torah portion from the Parsha from Pinchas. And then we'll do a practice based on it. And it's based on a teaching on the Parsha from the Kedushas Levi, the great Hasidic master, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. Actually, IJS put out a book of his teachings by Rabbi Jonathan Slater a few years ago, a fantastic double set book, really highly recommended with Jewish lights. Partner in Holiness, I think is the name of that. Very, very, very wonderful. And very highly recommended. So he's a wonderful, wonderful Hasidic master. A lot of his teachings are very centered on compassion, one way or the other, compassion and love of different kinds. And he was really famous for embodying that quality. So I just gonna open my my other window just to read to you the verses he's going to comment on. So this week's Parsha Pinchas has so many different pieces to it. And jammed in between several other pieces is actually a very, very significant point of transition. Moses spoke to the Lord saying, I'm reading from chapter 27 of Numbers of Bamidbar, verse 16. I'll read for a couple of verses. Moses spoke to the Lord saying, let the Lord, source of the breath of all flesh, appoint someone over the community, who shall go out before them and come in before them, and who shall take them out and bring them in, so that the Lord's community may not be like sheep that have no shepherd. So Moses is saying to God, please, now that you've told me, Moses has just been told that it's time for him to begin ending his life. And now that you've told me, God, that my life is coming to a close, please can you appoint someone to lead the people so they not be like sheep without a shepherd. And what I'd like to focus on, what the Kedushas Levi focus our attention on, is the way that Moses addresses the divine, the infinite. He says, Adonai Elohei Haruchot, Lechol Basar. So Adonai, often translated as the Lord or the Eternal. Elohei Haruchot Lechol Basar, God of the spirits of all flesh. Actually here in the JPS, as I read it here, it's source of the breath of all flesh, which is also very beautiful. So ruach, ruchot can mean both breath and spirit as well as wind. So it's actually a very unusual way for anybody to address God. We see here and there throughout the Torah, like for example, in the story of Noach, there are intimations of God's concern for basar, for flesh, meaning, us creatures of flesh and blood, but it's not so common for people to call God by a name, anything like this. So again, it's Adonai, Lord or Eternal, and then Elohei Haruchot Lechol Basar, the God of the spirits or the breath of all flesh. And the Kedushas Levi, our Hasidic master, says something amazing that we're going to practice with. He says to explain this amazing name of God that's so unique here that Moses uses, he tells us a story. He tells us about the time that Abraham welcomed the angels into his tent. And he says, remember that time? It's in chapter 18 of Genesis, if anybody wants to look it up after. The angels come to Abraham when he's recuperating. He's healing from his painful operation. And he runs. He's so eager to do hospitality to them. And he gives them food. And so much is made in our tradition and in other traditions about the fact that he's giving angels food. And so some of our commentators say, well, the angels obviously don't eat, but they just pretend to, and so on. Well, the Kedushas Levi here says the reason that Abraham gave them food, even though they were angels, and of course there's a whole question, did he know they were angels or not? He seems here to be assuming that Abraham did know they were angels, but that's a whole nother conversation. But he says the reason that Abraham gives food to the angels is, and this is amazing, he says, is to teach them compassion for us worldly creatures with bodies. Such a beautiful teaching. It's like angels, flying around up there in the world of spirit and being oh so holy. They need to learn to have compassion for us because it's very, very hard to be human. It's very, very hard have a body and have all the emotions and experiences and all the feelings and sensations and experiences that we have down here in this physical material world. And so the Kedushas Levi then transposes that lesson back to our verse in Pinchas, back to the strange name that Moses calls God. And he says, this is what Moses is getting at. He's saying to God, God of infinite compassion out there, don't forget you're also the God of the spirit and the breath of flesh. Don't forget that the people are flesh, and the people need a leader who can relate to them as flesh and blood that they are. And to help them be their best selves, we need to be realistic about who we are. We need to really accept our body and embrace our body. So that's a practice we're going to do today based on this teaching. So when you're ready, make yourself comfortable, please, for some meditation practice. We're going to sit quietly together, and I'll offer just an opening intention based on that teaching. If it's comfortable for you to have solid contact with the ground underneath you, that's always nice. If that's comfortable and available to you, if your feet or some other part of you can be in contact with the ground. When you're ready, bring your attention inside yourself. Let your eyes soften or close. Our practice today is going to begin with just noticing whatever's going on in our bodies. Just noticing whatever our body wants to tell us in each moment. Quiet down and do that for just a couple of minutes. And then I'll offer the next stage of the intention. Just let yourself notice what's going on in your body. As always, if other thoughts or sensations come, take us away from that. And just gently return to the asking, what's going on in my body right now? What does my body want to present to me? Keep coming back to the sensations themselves. What can I feel in my body? In this basar of ours, this flesh and blood of ours, what's going on? And the next stage of the intention, I'm going to invite you to work with for the rest of the set, or sit quietly with this, is from the teaching we just learned together. This idea of having compassion for our flesh. Something also other Hasidic masters like Rabbi also talks about. It's really hard to have a body. There are all kinds of challenges with it. So the practice is to welcome whatever we experience in our bodies for the next few minutes with as much compassion as we can. You might want to use words to help you with this. You might want to welcome things with a soft, loving voice, as if you were welcoming a small child or some other beloved. Oh, you sweet thing. And if it's having a hard time, if there's pain arising, you might want to say, oh, sweetie, poor thing, it's okay. Whatever's arising, let's welcome it silently for the next 10 minutes with as much compassion as we can. Notice where your attention is. Last few minutes of the practice, resolve to greet whatever arises in our body with as much compassion as we can. Coming to the close of the practice, gradually yourself bring it to a close for now, in your own time. As you do, feel free to move your body in any way you'd like to. You need to stretch or yawn or sigh. Do whatever you need to be comfortable. Come back together, everyone in their own time. Thanks, everyone. Over to you, Rabbi Mark.
Thank you so much, Daniel. So lovely as always. Just a pleasure to practice with you. And friends, we seal the practice as we do each day by reciting and offering opportunity to recite Kaddish, to praise the name of the God of comfort for those who have lost loved ones or are in mourning. If you have a yard site, if you're carrying grief, we invite you, if you would like, to share the name or names of anyone you're holding in your heart today in the chat box. And I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit for Kaddish. Yitkadal, Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Yama Divrach Yibrutei, Yamlich Malchutei, Chayechon, Yomechon, Chaye T'chol Beit Yisrael, Ha'agala, Bizman Karib, Ne'emru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach, Alam Lameh Hamayah. Yitbarach
Yishtabach Vitpa'ar Vidamam Vidnase Tadar Vidale Ulam Shmei Brifun Ami Tovir Chata V'Shirata Tush B'Chata V'Nechamata Yamru Amen Shama Rabam Maya Chaim Aleinu V'Yokol Yisrael Amen. Shalom B'Rama Shavuya Aseh Shalom V'Yokol Yisrael V'Yokol Yeshvei Tevel V'Yamru Amen.
Amen.
Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank our teacher for today, Rabbi Raphael Silverstein. I'm putting in the chat box the link to Applied Jewish Spirituality. You'll see there that many of the faculty members are people who are familiar to you from our daily sit, including Rabbi Daniel, and we're very blessed to connect and to make these connections. So I encourage you to check out their website and their offerings, which are truly wonderful. And thanks to Adi Stein, as always, for holding our space technologically with skill and with grace. You're invited to stay on for conversation with Rabbi Daniel for a few minutes about today's teaching for Parshat Pinchas and for this week. Looking forward to that in a moment. If you have a question, please put it in the chat box and preface it with question so I can keep an eye on that. And for those who are joining us the rest of the week, as I mentioned, we have a really fabulous lineup. Tomorrow will be led by Rabbi Shuli Passow of B'nai Jeshurun in New York City, on Wednesday by our friend Rabbi Susan Leiter, Kol Shofar in Tiburon, California. On Thursday, we'll be led for the first time in this series by Rabbi Marcelo Bronstein, formerly of B'nai Jeshurun in New York, now Costa Rica. And Friday, we'll sit into Shabbat together with Rabbi Dorothy Richmond of the Ramumu Yeshiva and Or Halev. So really looking forward to this week of practice together. In this, the first week of the traditional 3 weeks period known as the 3 weeks of brokenness in our calendar. More on that in a moment. But for those of you who are leaving us, be well, be safe, and we hope to see you at least one other time this week, if not for the whole week. So again, if you have a question you'd like to put to Daniel, please put it in the chat box. I think people are really appreciating your skill as a meditation teacher, Daniel. Thank you so much. Just wonderful to have you and be with you, practice with you. Very taken and really appreciative that you drew our attention to that part of the Parsha, this Parshat Pinchas. And I just want to throw out a couple of dots to connect and see. I don't want to stay in our heads. I want to stay in our bodies. But I think the upshot of your teaching about basically compassion for our humanity, right? It's really the upshot of it. Remembering compassion for what it means to be a flesh and blood human, and how hard it is to be a human being. Just hearing those words, like when you said it, it's really, it looks like, I imagine many of us felt as I do when I hear that. So like, oh yeah, right. It is hard. It's not so easy, which kind of belies the assumption we have that, it's not so hard, but it's truly hard to be a human being. A human being that knows it's made in the divine image, and how do we handle that, really, right? So two points of connection I just wanted to invite you to play with. One is that I think another time that phrase, that description of God comes up and used by Moses is in just a few weeks ago in Korach, right? When he and Aaron plead to God on behalf of the people, say like, don't wipe out the people, right? One person sins, you shouldn't wipe out everybody. You should be compassionate. Even there, where they have every reason to be furious, right, at the people, they plead on their behalf and say like, oh, look, they're just people, God, remember that. So there's that. I just wanted to connect that dot. But the other is, this is the beginning. Yesterday was Shivasar B'Tammuz, was the 17th of Tammuz. People may or may not know that begins this period of 3 weeks, known as the 3 weeks, leads up to Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the nadir of the Jewish calendar. It's a period of and yesterday commemorates the breaching of the walls of Jerusalem, beginning like the crack in the shell, right? Crack in the heart that gets bigger and bigger until the heart falls open on Tisha B'Av. And so brokenness is a theme. This is basically what's going to, that we're human beings, we're broken. And then we also have this week in Parshat Pinchas, this covenant of peace that God rewards Pinchas with for his act of zealotry. And what's amazing about that, what I love, is that the Vav in Shalom, in the Brit Shalom that's given him, is broken. It's the only, as far as I understand, maybe you know, I think the only instance of where it is permissible to write a letter in a broken form in a Sefer Torah. Right? So this is a week, really, I always think about, I just like, when I first learned that, it was just like, wow, that's amazing. That there's a crack in Shalom, in the Torah, in the Vav itself. So I just felt like those things really connected with, this Kedushat Levi teaching that you brought that was just so comforting in a time of awareness of brokenness. I don't know.
Thank you, Rabbi. So I just want to say it's always so lovely to be with you, to learn with you and teach with you and sit with you. Thank you for inviting me. So while you were speaking just now, I was thinking a couple of things. One is I really want to affirm that point about how hard it is to be a human being, especially in the face of the coping mechanisms we all have. We all have a kind of coping face. So sometimes people might call it a war face, hopefully not an actual war, but like we go about our business with this kind of like, I can do it. I'm capable, I'm accomplished, I'm competent. Maybe not all of us, but a lot of us, have this sense of needing to put on such a thing to get through the day and get things done. And actually, if that serves us, then that's fine up to the extent that it serves us. And for many of us, maybe that's very helpful. But then, there does come a point when it's like taking a good long hot bath. It's really helpful to kind of let that melt away and feel the fact that like underneath this coping face and this coping mechanism, I think of the song by Bob Dylan, Idiot Wind. It's actually, the song has a bit of an edge to it, but I feel like there's a lot of compassion in that one line. We're idiots, babe. We can't even feed ourselves. Wow. I love that line so much.
Tangled Up in Blue, right?
Right, Tangled Up in Blue. Beautiful. I mean, it's an album about, a really messy, painful divorce. And, he's saying to his ex-partner, like, underneath all the, like, I'm right, you're right, and all the, like, pretending to be a grown-up and all these other things, like, we're just idiots. And there's something so liberating about admitting that, like, we're just clueless. I had a friend when I was younger. We were about 20 years old, and we had like a code word for reminding each other of our fallibility. It was so healing and helpful. We just like say it to each other whenever anything in life wasn't perfect, which was like all the time. We'd just be like, you see, you remember? It was just like giving ourselves permission to be imperfect in that way.
Yeah.
So that's you mentioned the 3 weeks that we're in now. It can be very heavy. We can take a religious imperative for mourning and feeling the brokenness, and it can actually just become like another kind of stick to beat ourselves with, and call, God forbid, and cause more suffering, God forbid. Or it can be an invitation to soften, like you said, to open like a crack and then to open more and more. And I love the way you put it that, after the 3 week process, when we get to the culmination on the fast of the 9th of Av, then hopefully by then we've kind of done enough work of softening. But what did you say, for our heart to fall open or break open?
Mm-hmm.
And that's so beautiful. It's such a great way to think about it. And of course, that usually doesn't happen unless we put some intention and some regular practice in that direction towards it. So that's the invitation of this time. Okay. Can we turn towards what's not perfect? Beginning with ourselves, because really that's the primary arena for these things. And then, of course, we can also extend it outward to the world around us and people around us. But can we begin with ourselves and just smilingly, compassionately accept how human we are, and it's necessary, frankly.
Yeah, thank you. And I knew I could count on you for a good musical reference. I didn't know whether it would be Dylan or what, but thank you for that. Now I'm going to go back to that album. Um, so here's the thing. Let's go a little bit more deeply into this, because I like for us to use this time. We have about 7 more minutes for to transition from the teaching and the sit into the rest of the day, and into life basically, and have some clarity about the suggestion. And again, everything that is offered here is a suggestion. Right? It's just a suggestion that you can try out in your own experience. If it doesn't resonate for you, or if it seems harmful to you, God forbid, let it go. It's just. But we're addressing a range of things here. For example, you were speaking about coping mechanisms, right? Some people are experts at coping, right? And so that message of, you know what, it's okay. You don't have to cope, right? You can let that go. And like I love the image of the nice warm bath to let that melt away. And then on the other hand, we have people who really are struggling to cope, right? So at the other end of the spectrum, right, cannot, either because of pain, overwhelming guilt or shame or depression, God forbid, really can barely cope, right? So let's address that a little bit. Like what does this teaching have to offer for people who are in that state? Would you say?
Yeah, I really appreciate that invitation. Thanks very much. So I think the basic practice is the same, whatever's going on. But I think maybe there's like an important clause to add, which is, the practice is to feel with as much compassion as we can what's going on, also within what we call a safe window of tolerance. And so if there is stuff arising that's overwhelming, then we develop the skill through doing the practice to hold ourselves a little bit distant from it, a little bit back from it, so we can observe, oh, like there's something there. I might see there's something there that actually I'm not ready to go into right now. There's something there that if I do go into, I'll just get lost in it. And that will happen to everybody sometimes in the practice. So we learn through that experience, through really trial and error, we learn to develop the capacity to say, okay, this is my safe window of tolerance. I know that there's some things which actually feel like I'm not coping, feel like I'm overwhelmed. And I can just go into them as much as I want to when I want to. And sometimes we talk about titration, this practice of just like letting a tiny drip of what we want to work on come in, one drip at a time. So we can really choose and control the quality, the quantity, the concentration of what we want to work on. And that's something, as I say, it comes with trial and error and with experience. And then we can actually, by doing that, sometimes we think when we're kind of focusing on something easier, some of us might think we're cheating, or we're not really working on ourselves, or we're not really making progress. Actually, I've really learned through experience, even if all I did all day was meditate on bunny rabbits and flowers and pretty looking clouds, I would not be escaping. I would not be actually, doing harm, because actually what I'm doing is building a safe container that then other things can arise more safely in. So if you need to focus on the bunny rabbit sometime, that's okay. It's really, really important to give ourselves permission to be safe in the meditation.
Right. I think in keeping with the essence of your teaching today, which I think is really exactly what we need to hear, which is really about compassion, about it being a season of compassion. Because as you said, these 3 weeks could be seen as, and are understood, I think, by many probably, as a time for intense critique, judgment, self-blame. It's my fault. We failed. We haven't held up our end of the covenant. Therefore, blah, blah, blah. And this is a different take on it that is really an acknowledgement of our inherent fallibility and mortality and fallibility and brokenness as human beings, and embracing that, and understanding of God as embracing that with love. And so it does become, to feel like it's safe. The key thing here is it is safe to begin to let the heart break and keep breaking until it opens completely, and we are held while that happens, that we're going to be okay. But as you really pointed out, and I think this is, probably doesn't come up as often enough on these sets, is that the key is for each of us, each individual, to be aware of when we are feeling, something is happening, as you said, that takes us out of that window where we feel safe and able to be with what's coming up, and to take care of ourselves by being compassionate for ourselves by doing that. So I just wanted to ask you in the last 2 minutes, actually, very tachlis, very practically, in meditation, when people feel that's happening, if something's coming up that feels overwhelming, whether it's guilt, shame, pain, or you don't even know what it is, but you just know that you're either feeling very numb or terrified, what to do?
Great, thanks very much. So I would say it's really helpful to have a go-to place or visualization or experience that you can go to in those situations to make yourself safe. And that could be imagining myself with a particular person or in a particular place, or it could even be a particular place in my body where I know where if I put my attention there, I'm going to be safe. But whatever it is, it's something that I can devote all my attention to. It can take me out of the place of overwhelm and where I can be fully present with something safe, whether that's like, oh, my elbow feels funny, or, as they say, some scene or memory that's safe.
Great. Thank you for that. And we'll try to keep an eye on that, just for people to be aware of that. There are many tools that are available for people to use, and for you to keep yourself safe and to experience the kind of compassion for yourself that Rabbi Daniel is speaking of today. So let's leave it there for today. Thank you so much. I'm going to again, try to.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. There's the link for Applied Jewish Spirituality again. And yes, thank you, Florence. Let's bring in our teacher, Sylvia Borstein, here, who in her sweetness and the sweetness of her voice reminds us, to always give ourselves a nice massage of the chest, of the heart space. There, sweetheart. Okay. Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you, Adi. Erev Tov there in Yerushalayim. Actually, where are you? Where are you?
We're just outside it in Mutza. Just outside it.
Mutza. Okay. All right. Great to connect as always. Look forward to the next time, and hope to see everyone tomorrow for practice.